Hello. So there's this really long tournament going on OGS at the moment. It's called Through the Years Long Correspondence. It started about a week and a half ago. And what's really interesting about it is one, it's really long time control. So it's 1 week increment for each move you make. And also the clock pauses on weekends, which makes it even longer. So if both players take their time, one game can easily take about 5 years, I think. So some estimates, and there are 12 rounds in a tournament, so some estimates for how long this tournament will go is about 60 years. Of course, in practice, we'll have some players dropping out, and most players will play much quicker. But it's sort of a really interesting sort of social experiment to see how many players will stick with it through the years. Um, and also there's what makes this so interesting is that there were actually a lot of players who joined this tournament. So there were 2,233 registered players in the first round. Of course, many of them didn't really know what they were getting into, so there's a lot of them who just maybe resigned all the games in their first round or just timed out and so on. So we will of course have a kind of drop off over time, where players don't want to I expect a lot of players to finish the first round, but probably not that many to hang around until the second round, which will be a few years into the future. Um, but since there are that many players, there's a good chance that at least some of them will be remaining into the later rounds. Um, so with over 2,000 players, it's a simultaneous McMahon, which means that you're playing um, it's groups of 10. So each group you can see here is 10 players, and everyone plays everyone else simultaneously. Which means that there are about 10,000 games in the first round. And there are like 231 groups. So I'm not going to scroll through all of them, but I thought I'd just scroll down to my group. Here you can see my group, because I joined this tournament, of course. So we have one player who hasn't been playing his games, so he timed out in all of the games where he played black, and is probably going to in the games where he plays white as well. But apart from that, it seems that we are 9 people are quite evenly ranked and are going to play, so it's going to be very interesting. So I thought I'd just go through and just show where I'm at in my games right now and kind of talk through my thought process. Um, let's see, like that and like that, I think. So here you can see the 9 games I've got going on, and it's my move in 7 of them at the moment. So I thought this would make sort of an interesting different video to just go through them one by one and kind of say what I'm thinking about. Of course, these are ongoing games, so not that I normally get that many comments, but I am treating this just as a Malkovich log where I'm just saying my thoughts, but I of course don't want any. I'm not supposed to get any help on any of these positions, of course. But we're very early in the opening, so I also don't think, for instance, if some of my opponents were to watch this, which is unlikely, I don't think that would be really affect the game either. But so okay, here's one game against Vortex. We have a very standard opening. We just took, so black takes a 3-4 point, otherwise we have 4-4 points, and then black finishes it off with one high large Shimari. So at this point, I'm I'm probably choosing between this approach and this approach. There are many choices actually. So these are sort of my first instincts. You could also consider jumping into the 3-3 point, or possibly maybe this enclosure, sort of a big point. Um, if I recall correctly, it's very similar to this. The sort of there was this really common AlphaGo Fuseki, which looks something like this, where white really strangely ignores this shoulder hit. I don't remember if it was exactly like this, but something along these lines. So probably this is quite a good move. Mm. I'm not so used to playing this enclosure, this knight move enclosure. In a much more used to the sequences following from an approach like this. But maybe this is a good time to try this out and see what we get. So let's go for this one. Okay, here's our next game. We have a 3-3 invasion, so here we basically only have two choices. We're going to either block here or block on the other side. In the past, I would have probably blocked here all the time, thinking that this creates a wall here, which is directed to this area where I'm planning to make points or gain some influence. But AI has sort of taught us that it's very playable to also block from the other side, since there's this variation where there's like this variation where actually in the end, oops, let's say like this, white actually gets the wall towards this side, even though white started with blocking on this side. I don't think here white has this ladder into this stone. So um, since there is this variation which is quite commonly played, it's quite okay to block from this side. And once again, this is something I've seen a lot in program games and so on, but haven't played much myself. So this sort of long correspondence games is a really nice opportunity to play stuff that you know think is good, but you're not that familiar with because you have all the time in the world to read it out. So yeah, I'll go for this one. I think both are probably playable, but yeah, I'll choose this one. Okay, here we had a quite interesting Fuseki where this is sort of the start of the Shusaku Fuseki, where like white could approach another corner and black could get this. How is it normally played? Is it just like this and then white gets, yeah, something like this. At least this black getting 4 points is something that Shusaku like to play. Um, and I just pressed here, going on the fact that I've been taught that this press is really urgent nowadays, to not allow black to get this Kosumi or some other move in the area. And it's very forcing, so black responds. But now I feel like I am a little bit behind in territory since black got 3 corners. Kind of course, this corner is still half open. So it's a bit difficult to decide at this point what is most important. Probably like the choice should be between approaching this corner and this corner, probably a low approach. And it's very difficult to decide between them. What could we expect here? Let's say, for instance, that black just plays the Cosmi very peacefully. Is this a move I want to aim at later? This is sort of locally, this is a good shape point, but I'm not sure in relation to this Joseki if it's really a good idea. Mhm. There's also the question of like if I play here, does black really have a good move to finish off this area? Like if black makes some sort of enclosure here, it's sort of now it's quite low along the side. This stone is low and this stone is low. So I don't really need to jump in here to prevent enclosure. I don't think it's that efficient for black to make an enclosure here. It would have been very much different if this stone was on R4 maybe. Uh, but here when I'm approaching here, I'm sort of, yeah, it's not that attractive for black to make this enclosure, since then I can press and take an extension and I'm negating this. Like if black takes this enclosure, I could maybe press again and then take something like this. And it should be playable for me. So I think I'll go with this one. I really have no idea if one of this is much better than the other, but I think I like the look of this one. Here we have approach to a 4-4 stone. My opponent played quite an interesting opening with a 3-5 point. And then approach my 4-4. And this one again, one of those things where a few years ago I would always answer here without thinking because, or like maybe play a pincer because I thought that this double approach was quite severe. But AI has taught us that the double approach is not that severe. So it's quite possible that I should instead invade either here or here. I like some sort of approach better than just taking my own corner. That feels a bit passive. So this is like my first instinct. This looks a bit familiar. Like the 3-4 approach should be bigger than the 4-4 approach according to AI. This just of course in general principle. I don't know in this position, and I'm not going to check for this ongoing game. But I believe in most positions this should be bigger. And if black double approaches, again this press is quite forcing, so white can get this in center and then return to this corner. But here I'm also considering whether it's even bigger. Like I remember many years ago someone saying that in this corner the stone closer to the corner is sort of, there's a reason where we start why we start with the 3-4 and not the 5-3 normally, which is that this stone is closer to the corner, so in terms of territory we expect this stone to get more. Um, Even if we disregard like who plays first, white has a little bit better position in this corner. So here, when I'm given the choice between this approach and this approach, I'm wondering whether locally this is probably better. But I'm not sure about that, since like the follow-up, like taking this press into account, is like here I get the press if black tenukis, but when I approach like this, then black immediately gets the press. Um, so once again, I think that by taking this corner, it's not super attractive for black to take this anytime soon, since when I press like this, I'm sort of already making this side quite low. I'm thinking probably after this approach, black will want to add a move to this, and then maybe this is a good exchange compared to not having it. And I can then come back to something like this. And yeah, whenever black double approaches here, it's not I will just handle it. So I will focus on, I will try to work under the assumption that 3 4 points and 3 5 points are more urgent than this 4 4 point situation. And yeah, I think I'm gonna go with this one. Here we have a 3 3 point Joseki, which have also my opponent opened with double 3 3, which is very exciting. It's very unusual opening. And then another 3 3 points by invading. I chose this side to block. This is somewhat arbitrary. I thought a little bit about, whether I want to face, like this enclosure is facing this side, so I sort of decided I prefer this influence to maybe face this side. But like we said before, this can turn around, um, like in um, like in this Joseki, and then I'm facing this way anyway. So, but probably like so when I play this one, there's also there's some other variations. White could, for instance, attach here, and I block, and then there's this really complicated variation after this cut, which it's too complicated for me. There are videos on it and so on, but yeah, I don't know it well yet. So I kind of like the idea of just playing something very simple, easy to understand, like this push or extend. And white could knights move or maybe jump. If white pushes, we get back into something like this, which I feel quite comfortable with. So yeah, I think I'll go with this one. Go with something easy. Let's do that. And here we had kind of inspired by my other opponent, I think. I started with a 3 point in this game to vary things a bit. And then I played this approach. My opponent just responds. And now we have this. I used to really like playing this Kobayashi Fuseki. This formation on the bottom here for black used to be called the Kobayashi Fuseki, or is still called the Kobayashi Fuseki, but it's not played much anymore. Um, I think because it used to be thought that this approach is a mistake for white, so white has to be more careful when approaching, and then black gets a good result. But once again, I think AI has ruined this for us and said that white can still approach here. It's actually fine. And generally, AI thinks that some sort of side move like this is not as important as some playing in the corner. So one idea here is to approach the other corner, or maybe enclose this corner. Since this is a 3 4 point, it's quite urgent. I could also take a 3 3 point up here. Usually it's quite like the initial 3 point is at least something white wants to respond to. But of course, after something like this, white can take center. So it's not like in the olden days we used to play this, where black gets center, but at the cost of making white extremely thick. But nowadays, we're much more likely to see something like this one. So I think it doesn't feel like a good idea to 3 3 invade while there's still a big point like this on the board. The lower area here feels more important. And my upper right corner, of course, is a 3 3 point, so there it's not very urgent for either one of us, I think. Like it's the enclosure is not very efficient, and yeah, it's best for both of us to just leave it for now. So then if I decided not to play in the upper left, I mean another option of course would be to approach, but then once again white could approach me. So I think I've sort of talked myself into playing some enclosure here. And once again, I used to always prefer this tight enclosure, and AI prefers these larger enclosures like these ones. But I think this one has seen sort of a rise in popularity recently. I mean, I haven't been following it closely, but I saw something about this being quite playable also. So maybe, like, I've been playing these big ones a lot recently to get used to them, but I haven't played this one a lot, so maybe I'll play this one now to yeah, get some variety in my openings. Not sure about the direction here. Like white could play some pincer here next, of course. Um, but like my other option would be to play something like this. I guess that might also be kind of okay. Because like this, yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think this should be good, but I feel a bit uncomfortable with um, how I'm supposed to handle something like this. Can I still just, like, of course, I could just do something like this. Hmm. I think it sort of feels more straightforward to play this. Um, I had this feeling that this is probably a better move in the eyes of a stronger player, but for me, maybe this is easier to handle actually. Um, let's think about the other variations we might see here. There's also, something like this. I think I'm going to get Santa, but maybe white will get to make this extension, which is a bit sad. If I take an enclosure here now, white can extend along the side. But I go to corner territory, so I think it's okay for me. So I think I'm gonna try this one, see how it turns out. And our final game, quite similar to another game before where I played this press, but instead in that game it was, well, it's not really quite similar, it's just this corner the same. In that game I also had a 4-4 point here, but black had 3-4 points. Now here we had this was where black approached. I said no, 3-4 approach is bigger. Black double approached, I pressed. Now I need to decide whether, I think probably, like all this stuff I'm saying about which is more urgent is pretty much based on Andrew Simon's Lila Zero opening gospel, and to my recollection, attaching out from a 4-4 point is probably bigger than, this is more urgent than approaching a new 4-4 point. So I think probably the choice should be between this attach and this attach. Um, and we might get something like this. And it feels like I prefer this direction if we played this sequence compared to this one. But it's really difficult to say actually. I have this stone here as well, so it's probably not a big difference. Hmm. Yeah, it probably doesn't really matter. But let's see, like this. Like this group should be pretty flexible in all variations. I shouldn't worry too much about this getting attacked. And I could build either towards this stone or towards this group, so yeah. I think like I liked something about this, provided we do play this variation. I don't remember exactly here. Am I supposed to play something like this pincer now? I sort of like this direction here. But yeah, I don't know the sequence well enough to say anything for sure. But I think I'll try this. Like in a live game, I would probably play this because it sort of looks more. I don't know, it feels more in tune with this little wall here. But let's try let's try this one in this case. So okay, those were my 7 moves in this tournament. So the other 2 games were so I have this one in which my opponent is probably not going to play at all, and this was one, I think this one where where I didn't make a move today. I can just show it for reference. The last thing that happened was that I took this corner enclosure instead of responding to this approach, which is a bit weird. Once again, trying to apply this um, idea that approaching a 3-4 should be bigger than approaching a 4-4. But I had no idea about how good my direction is in this case. White looks a bit weird here, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I just want to try something different for this video. Hopefully it's kind of a short and digestible video, just one move at a time. And let me know if you'd like to see more of this. I could make this come back every now and then and show my next move in in the super long games. I won't run out of games in this tournament probably for the rest of my life. um, well, when we're done with this round, of course, there will be a long break until the next round while we wait for everyone else to finish. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.